Hey everybody! We've been getting some questions on the borders and stuff like that. When you get done exporting your file, bring it into something like LightBurn, which is a very popular tool, and how to get it set up for the engraver. So we're going to go ahead and walk through how to set up your files successfully to be cut and engraved. So the first thing we're going to do here is just create a new project. I'm just going to call it New York City. It's an easy one. And then we're going to choose the starter template. It'll just come with some layers and features already pre-set up for you. Create project. And now one thing I'm going to do to make my life a little bit easier is I like to make my border color different than white. It's just more easier for me to see. I'll probably do like this purple here or bluish kind of color. And then we'll go ahead and export. For the sake of this project here, we're just basically going to show you what it looks like inside LightBurn and what to change and what not to change before you can start going. Okay, so we have our layers here, and we can look through them like this. And it looks like we don't really need to make any changes. The vector strategies have been chosen already, and the output formats, which are SVG. And let's go ahead and click next. Tiling. We're not going to do tiling this time, but let's do it right after I show you this other portion in LightBurn here. So go ahead and click next, and then we'll export and we'll confirm and export. So this will take less than a minute, and then we'll be able to download our files, and then I'll show you how this all works. All right, it looks like we have our files. You can see it auto opens here once the latest download is ready, and you can kind of get a visual here. It looks like it did what we asked it to do. Let's go ahead and download the whole zip, and we want to choose output. Original will just be like what you saw before we applied the tracing strategy. Okay, let's just name it this. It ends in A79, and we'll save that. Okay, cool. Now we're going to head over to LightBurn. And what I would like to do here is show you a little trick that I use. You can use the import tool for LightBurn. But as you can see, we have this zip file here on the right side. I'm going to open that up. And we're going to open up the folder here. And inside this folder, you have roads layer cut. You have some attribution, land layer cut, and land layer engrave. So what we want to do here is we want to pull all these files in, and you can do this a couple ways. You can pull them in like this, one at a time. If you want, we'll fix that in a minute. Don't worry about that. Or we can pull them in like land layer cut and land layer engrave on top of each other like this. Okay. And then we'll bring in the roads layer cut. So this would be my preferred method. And now you can see that we have this land layer engrave and land layer cut that have been like put together almost ready for the engraver. But we have a few things to do here, and I'll show you. So on the land layer cut, which is like this color, that's a little hard to see. I believe it's this one. Let's see. All you have to do is go over to this right-hand panel and click the toggle to show off and on until you hit the right one. So it looks like that is our land cut layer. And why that's important is because the land cut layer is going to have the cut line for the outside, whereas the fill layer, it actually has a fill line for the outside. And the reason why is this. If we were to bring in the land engrave layer separately, oh, that's horrible. And, oh, yeah, let's do this for now. If we were to bring this in separately like this, we would then use this border to align to the other one and drag it in and then delete it and all that stuff. You can do that if you want, but I wouldn't recommend it. What you need to do here is simply, for now, while we're working, turn off. Let's see here. It's a little hard at first, but you'll get used to it. So let's turn off the fill real quick. We're left with this like reddish line and this bluish line. So looks like we have those right here. So I'm going to just turn those off. and we're going to turn back on the fill. Well, why would we do that? Well, now we can work with this fill layer before we move on. But once we're done, we can then reveal the land cut lines again, and everything will be nice and perfect and lined up. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and delete this line. And then we're going to delete this outer border. Oh, but look, it's going to delete everything. So we have to, I think it's like Control U on Windows and Command U on Mac to ungroup, or you can simply right click and then click ungroup. I already did it, so that's why it's doing that. Now I'll click out and click back into the border. Now it's a separate border. I'm going to hit delete. And it looks like there might have been 2 there for some reason, so I'm going to hit delete. Okay. For some reason, there was 3 there. Oh, I think I know why. Let's see. Yeah, because this is a stroke line, so it strokes 2 lines to the outside like that. So we can do this multiple ways, but yeah, just zoom in. We just want them gone. So just delete those fill lines. And now one more thing. We did all this work, and as you can see, these fill lines are actually kind of outlining. We just set that back to fill. Cool. So now we can turn back on our land colors, which were these right here. Turn that on, turn that on. So now you have everything you need. So these two, this purple and this reddish one right here, those are both going to cut. And if you wanted to, you could like select, let's see, let's turn this off. We could select everything and we could just make it its own color. Say, hey, we want to make this purple. And then we can show the fill layer again. And now what you can do is for the purple, since you want all of that to cut, the outline and the land, the water will fall out nicely and all that stuff. You can simply do that here. So you would need to come into the power, double click the speed power settings and change them to match what your laser does for cutting those out. And then similarly, you can do that for this bluish layer here, which is just a engrave. And you can set your engrave settings by double clicking speed and power on that layer and changing the speed and max power here. And the last one, probably self-explanatory, but this is your nice top layer. And what you can do here is simply click on speed power and change those to your engraver settings for cut. And that's pretty much it for just like a normal export. Let's do one that does map shapes. So we have a lot of files over here, it looks like. Let's go ahead and clean them up so we don't get confused. All right. So let's go ahead and go back here and let's open the studio on this particular one again. And let's go ahead and make it a heart. Cool. Let's preview export. And now let's go ahead and click next. We're happy with everything. Let's see, are we happy with that? Yeah. So click next and then confirm. This is going to be even easier because what we were matching up before was a square, or you could even do like a rectangle, or a different aspect of a square is a rectangle, right? So with map shapes, we're just gonna make an outline around the shape as a square or rectangle. So that's going to be used alignment only and then deleted. And I'll show you that process here once this is done processing. All right, it looks like we have our files that we need. So let's go ahead and download zip and we'll click output. And the last 3 letters on here are P7D. So we'll save that just so we can get an idea. And it looks like we have them on our desktop here. So I'm gonna go ahead and double click this zip file. Cool. And now let's open it up. So we've just unzipped it on Mac, and let's go ahead and kind of follow the same pattern where we take the land layer engrave and the land layer cut and we bring them in. And there you go. And then we'll bring in the roads cut layer. Cool. And then let's take a look at this. So, you know, this outside border gets drawn because maybe you wanted to bring in the heart and the engraved layer separately, and maybe the land engraved layer didn't need a border. And so there's like a lot of edge cases to this scenario. However, for what we're trying to do with map shapes in general, you just select that border. Once you're happy with it and you bring everything in, you see I accidentally deleted everything on the fill. So you need to select the border, and you see how it selects everything else. So we're going to Command ungroup. So C or Command U or Control U, or you can click the border and then Control and then ungroup it. But we'll go ahead and delete that. And so now we're just left with making sure that the cuts are cuts and the fills are fills. So how do we do that? There's a lot here, so we can just kind of work with our toggles again. Let's see what this does when we show or hide that. Cool. So while that was useful for spacing everything out for us, because if we hadn't spaced this out, then we would have had to engrave on this frame here, which is actually going to be covered by this roads frame. So it's kind of a waste of time, and that's why we have it. So it's nice to be able to unshow. I don't even know if that's a word, but and then make sure before you engrave also, I did forget to mention, make sure that you have the output on or off for these things. So even though they don't show in your editor, if you have the output on, the laser will pick the job up to do. And so in this case, since we don't need the fill for this at all, I turned off the output and the show. And like we can just totally ignore this up here. Let's see. Oh yeah, because we turned it off because we're using two colors of the same, which is causing the. But we'll just concentrate on the heart for now. This is the fun part. You won't be doing multiple things like this at once. And if you are, just choose more colors. But let's go ahead and go to the heart here, and let's just take a look. So we know that this line right here is going to be cut. And then this outer edge we want to cut. So we could essentially really take this black fill real quick and just turn it off. Looks like we have some weird intersecting thing going on here. Let's see if we can find it. Yeah, just this extra thing we don't need. So let's turn off the output and the show for that. And then now that we're here, we know that we're going to cut this land and we're going to cut this border. So it would make a lot of sense to come in here and just choose a whole new color. And then that way we can set our speed and power here. And then we know all that's just going to cut and it's one cohesive piece. Then we can turn this back on. And so it's a lot more clear to us now. Now, one thing to mention is obviously like we're using black here. And so what does that mean? It means we're sharing black for this and for that. And they're two different things. One's a filled black and one's an outline black. So what we need to do here, let's just change this one because it's easier to select. Change it to this like reddish kind of color. Let's go back to line mode for that. And then we can change the speed and power for that to become a cut line. Now let's go ahead and change the black to a fill. Well, what did that do? Let's go back to line. See how these are hollow on the inside? Well, boom, now they're filled. And then we can set for this black, we can set our engrave layer, engrave settings for your specific laser. Cool. So there's an example of how to do like a map shape. And then let's go back here and open the studio back up. And let's go ahead and take this square because squares and rectangles, and what I mean by rectangles is like this, they are the ones that can do tiling. So this is going to be a tiling example next. Now, tiling has two borders, the little tiles, and then it has the external border, which is this guy right here. So we can run two tests here. They'll produce the similar result. So to make life easier, I think let's just leave it on for now. So we're going to prepare the map layers. And it's very similar to what we did on the first map, but this time we are going to set tiling. So let's go next. Now let's enable tiling. Now there's a whole video on tiling, so you can come in here and change your rows, change your columns, spacing, border, all that stuff. You can change tile borders, all that good stuff. I think it's worth having a color. Sometimes like there might be like a default of white. I would personally try to have a color of tile. I just think it makes life easier. And one more thing I'm going to add here is sometimes because we have all these, things can get a little confusing. I think it would actually be worth getting out of this really quickly and just going back to LightBurn. And while that's loading, we'll go back to our tiling here and look at it. This outer edge border, this is like the main map. We put a border on the outside of this thing. And these inner borders is actually like what's breaking up into tiles. And then we add a little border because we want everything to stick together once it's laser cut and engraved. So we'll show you an example here of with that, and then I'll show you an example without the outer border. This looks good to me. I'm going to go ahead and click next, export, confirm, and export. Okay, looks like we made it to the studio. Export still processing. Please wait for it to complete. All right, it looks like we have our exported tiles here. And so we'll follow the same process and download zip, download output. The last three is 1 MU. Let's go ahead and save. And then let's go back to LightBurn. And let's go ahead and make this a little smaller. And let's see, there's the zip for 1 MU. We're going to go ahead and open this. For Mac, it's just double click on the zip. And then we're going to go ahead and double click on the folder. And here's our folder items again. So I like to do this off the grid. Let's do it off the grid. It's a little nicer. Let's bring in the roads cut layer. And you're like, whoa, that looks wrong. Well, that's actually kind of how LightBurn works. So we're going to fix that shortly. Then let's bring in the land layer. And remember, let's bring in the cut and the engrave at the same time. And when we do that, they'll line up. So we don't have to do it later. It's kind of nice. Okay, so real quick here, just like an easy win is like we could just change this, which looks like this color here. Just set itself to fill. Let's change it back to line. And that obviously made these go to line because it shared the same color, because that's just how we set it up in our map. And that's okay. So it looks like the right side is pretty close to being done. The last thing we'd need to do for the roads cut layer here is just go around and just disconnect these little node lines that got connected because of how our tracing process works. And those are pretty much ready to go. Now don't move them around because you might need some sort of spacing or reasoning here in a bit. So just, leave them nice and spaced just like these are. And now we can go here and go, okay, what do we need? Well, remember on our last one here where we had the heart and we had like that bluish border too, and we didn't really need it, but it actually saves engraving time. So we put it there. And that bluish border looks like, is it this one? Yeah. So we don't actually need this. So let's just turn off the show and then the output's out. So that's really nice. It's already done for us. And now we can just look a little closer. Well, it looks like we have this black that needs to be fill. It would be a lot easier for me to change this black to a different color so I can manipulate the other color layer easier. So let's go ahead and turn this to line. Look how there's no output for that. Well, I could just turn that on. Pretty easy. There's a line here, and then I can change speed and max power settings for this to be a cut job. And then in here now, I don't have to worry about clicking every single one of these. Well, actually, that would have been not too bad. But I can just go here now and say, this is actually a fill. And that way, when I go to set my engrave layer, speed power right here, this will do a nice engraving. And then, we can do exactly what we did on the roads cut layer. Just kind of walk around and delete these node connections made by the tracing mechanism. And go ahead, select them all like that. I use command, I hold down command and then I click each one. And then afterwards, now that they're highlighted, I click delete. So if we wanted to make this just a little bit easier to one less layer, because right now we have two. And remember, we've done this process before similarly, but I'll do it again. We could not show the fill. And it looks like we have this weird, this guy right here, which doesn't really play a good role. So we'll just turn him off completely and the output. Now we're just left with these land layers. Well, they don't really need to be different colors. And honestly, they are cut layers. So if we already set line 27 up with the right speed and power, we could simply assign those values there too, to that color. And that color is already set up. So now all of the cut layers are the same color. Cool. Now we can turn on, which I believe is this. Nope, that's not this one. Not this one. Okay. We can turn our filled layer back on. So now we have this like land cut. So for all the ones I did, the heart and the square and all those, what this does is like you could put this on your laser now and you can send the job, and because you've told the black to engrave with certain speed and power, and you've told the green to cut with certain speed and power for the specs of your laser, this job becomes much easier. And so typically what you'll do here is you'll just cut the land, and then you'll engrave on the same job, and then you'll cut the roads cut. Where's the water? Well, the water is simply just the lower layer, and it's a full piece. So in this case, if you wanted, you would see, okay, what's like if you took one tile, you'd say, what's the outline? Well, it's 110 millimeters, 0.456. And so you just basically come over here and you would make a square like this. Cool, and then lock it. That is not what I said. Let's see what I do wrong. Oh, I didn't click enter, I don't think. Okay, cool. Now I'll lock it. So now you have this square here, and you could simply cut this 9 times. And then put this would be your water layer. So maybe you cut 9 squares. Alternatively, you could clear these up, but I wouldn't recommend that. So yeah, just do some sort of square like that. And so the water layer sits behind your land layer sits behind your road layer. And there you have it. So let's just do one more quick one, which is going to be without this outside border, just to see what it looks like. See how sometimes when you delete all your layers, there's still some hanging out here? I honestly don't like that. I close LightBurn because I don't really want something to follow on accident and cause an issue. But let's go back to the studio. And we're going to go ahead and turn off borders. So let's go to tracing strategy, turn off border. I'm sorry, tracing, my mind. Configure layer options, the settings cog here. And then we're going to go and turn off the border by making it a 0 width. And then the roads cut layer, we're going to go ahead and make that a 0 width. So that's great. We're going to go ahead and preview that. And then we're going to just basically have our borders on the tiles and see how that looks when we export. All right, let's go ahead and click enable. And now we have these borders here for each tile, but we don't have that like big external border on the outside of this now, which is pretty cool. You can take a combine look real quick if you wanted to. And then I don't think there's any reason why we're not ready to go ahead and export. So let's go ahead and export. All right. It looks like we have our tiles now without the outer border. Let's go ahead and follow the same process. Download output, ELGJO, save. We'll open up this folder, follow the same process that we've been following. Let's go ahead and drag in roads cut. And you're like, it looks a little wonky. We'll fix that. Land layer cut and land layer engrave. So make sure that you select each one of them. Use the key binding command, pull down command while you click those. Hopefully you didn't get this far in the video without knowing that, but I'm happy that I'm sharing it now. So let's go ahead and bring these over. And now we can work on the files. So right off the bat, we know this looks wrong. Just, it's obviously not supposed to be a fill. So let's go ahead and just select this roads cut layer here and make it like a purple. And that just like made it a line mode 2. But it also shared more colors so that we can move faster and do this. So obviously over here we look and there's a lot here, but just remember this outside border that we made for these tiles was specifically so that on the engrave layer, because the blue border was for the engrave layer, it's so that we don't have engraving go out to the edge here. Don't need to do it. It wastes a lot of time. So we can just simply turn that off. And then we know we have, we just go around real quick, hold down Command, and just click all these. And it's kind of an easy win. Oh, I guess that not that easy. So here, Command. Okay, we'll delete some of them just in case we accidentally do that again. Okay, so for the roads cut, boom. All those extra nodes, lines removed due to our tracing process, and then here you go. Delete. Cool. And then, like I've said it before, one last really nice thing to do to improve this whole thing is just to hide the fill layer real quick, and it looks like that nuisance, which has some weird intersecting lines that turn out to be colors. Just turn them off, turn off output, turn off show, you're good to go. And then we can go over here and select all, and we can also make this, I think it was this color. Oh, 15. There we go. So these are all cut layers now, and then we can just go in once, set the speed, set the max power, and be good to go for cuts. We now can turn back on the fill. Now the output would have worked, but we just couldn't see it. So we now are showing fill, and we can take one last glance at it. And this is going to cut beautifully, and you're going to have nice tiles. And, make each tile as big as your laser if you want, and have a huge map or whatever you're going for. So I hope you found this video really useful. There's a lot here. I think we've been on for quite a while, but if you have any questions, you can reach out to us at support@lasermapmaker.com. You can visit our Facebook official page and you can ask your questions there. We really look forward to seeing what you make. Please reach out if you have any more questions. Thank you.